right, the next part of this, before we actually get into Newton's laws, is we need to talk about a property of matter that's called inertia. Now, inertia is an object's tendency to want to keep doing what it's doing. So if an object is moving straight ahead, it wants to keep moving straight ahead. If an object is sitting still, it wants to keep sitting still. And this is a property that all matter has. Anything that has mass has inertia. However, it is directly related to its mass. So, oh look, there's swans out there. So an object that has more mass has more inertia. An object that has less mass has less inertia. So if you think about it, I mean, it really is harder to get a heavy object to change what it's doing than a lighter object. If you had a giant boulder rolling at you down a hill, you would want to get out of the way and not try to stop it. And let's think about this with regards to driving. If you're driving a small car, it's way easier to maneuver it. It's easier to get it to change what it's doing. It's easier to get it to accelerate. It's easier to get it to slow down. It's easier to get it to turn and make curves. Whereas if you were driving a big tractor trailer, it's much harder. Have you ever been driving behind a tractor trailer that's going up a hill? Oh my Lord, it takes forever for that thing to get going. So here we're behind a giant truck. You see, it's very easy for me to accelerate, but really taking a long time to get this truck up to even half speed. And it's a huge truck, dump truck with a double dump load. But once he gets going, he does all right. It just takes much longer for that large mass to get going. But boy, you don't want to be in its way when it's going downhill. Your finger's covering the camera. Right, my videography person is not a professional here. So, large objects, massive objects, things that have a lot of mass, have a lot of inertia. Things that don't have a lot of mass don't have a lot of inertia. Okay, so let's finish this up with just a couple review notes about inertia. So inertia is a property that all things that have mass have. So essentially we know that all matter has mass. So all matter has this property called inertia, which is the tendency of that matter to resist a change in motion. So essentially things want to keep doing what they're doing. Now, this tendency changes depending on how much mass there is. The larger the mass, the greater the resistance. So the larger the mass, the harder it is to change something's behavior. The less mass, the easier it is. So if you think about that in lots of different examples, for example, how hard is it to move a big heavy piece of furniture once it's sitting still? But once it gets going, it's pretty easy to do. For the most part. The same thing with stopping something. You know, you have something big or you're going, we'll get to that later. It's a lot harder to stop it. Moving something small, very easy. It's low resistance to change. So thinking about cars, if I was driving a giant flaming semi-truck, which has a huge amount of mass, that would have a lot of inertia. So remembering that your stopping distance, how long it takes you to get up to speed, is much different. So you would want to consider that in driving and how you are driving and behaving on the highway. Whereas if you drove a tiny little Mini Cooper, much easier to control, much easier to maneuver. It takes less time to get up to speed, less time to stop. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you go crazy with your Mini Cooper. It's just a different type of driving.